G'day guys, on today's video we're going to be showing you how to install extended differential breathers on this 80 Series Landcruiser. We're going to be using this extended diff breather kit from Terrain Tamer, which comes with everything you'll need to do the job. Now this kit can actually be used on any four-wheel drive, but today's video is going to be most applicable to the 70, 80 and 105 Series Cruisers. We'll just quickly jump underneath the car and explain why this is a really important mod to do if you're going to be taking your vehicle off-road. As you drive the car, the oil inside your differential and axle housing is going to heat up and thermally expand, which would lead to pressurization of the air inside of this cavity, if not for your diff breather, which basically acts as a pressure vent. Now in the factory location, they're not particularly high in the car, which means that if you drive off-road through some water or some mud, they can become clogged, and you don't have anywhere for that pressure to vent. Now, not having a pressure vent means that you're going to lead to putting additional stress on your axle oil seals at the end of each housing, which can lead to premature failure of those seals, which is a relatively costly and time-consuming job to repair. The simple and cheap solution to this is to extend those diff breathers nice and high in the engine bay to reduce the chance of them becoming clogged. So we'll just quickly run through all the tools and parts that we need to do the job. The TTDBK kit from Terrain Tamer comes with 10 meters of hosing, the diff breathers themselves and your mounting hardware. It also comes with 10 cable ties, fitting instructions and these crimp fittings for the ends of the hose. We've chosen to replace those with 4 6 to 16mm hose clamps, which I picked up from the local hardware store for about $1 each. And you can also have some additional cable ties on hand if you like. As far as the tools, you're going to need either a crimping tool or a 1/4 inch socket if you want to use hose clamps, and a 12mm socket as well. Then I've got 12 and 14mm open-ended spanners for these fittings, and we've got some end cutters and a drill with a number 2 Phillips bit. Finally, I've got a pair of safety glasses and some paper towel for cleaning up any mess. Now as always, before we jump underneath the car, we've chocked both of the back wheels. The first thing that we're going to do is to install our mounting bracket, and we want to try and install it nice and high in the engine bay. Keeping in mind the route for our hosing, we want to try and avoid the engine and the hot exhaust if we can. So I found a place on the firewall just here, and we're going to install it using the self-tapping screws through here. Once you're happy with where that's installed, we're going to jump underneath the car and remove our old diff breathers. Starting with your rear diff breather, which is located on top of the axle housing just on the left-hand side of the vehicle, you can pinch this clip together, move that up and out of the way, and then you can pull the tubing up and off of the barb fitting. And then take your 12mm socket and we're going to undo this bolt up here. And you can throw that all away because we won't need any of it for the new extended diff breathers. Then I'm going to take some paper towel and wipe off the barb fitting. To start with the install of the extended diff breather, take your hose and make a small loop in it like that. Pop one of your hose clamps over the end, and then we're going to push the end down over the barb fitting. The reason we make this loop in the tube is to give us a little bit of play for when the axle articulates off-road, otherwise this might pull tight and potentially pull the tube off of the axle housing. Then we can start with the first of those cable ties. So what we're aiming to do here is to run along the chassis rail on the left-hand side of the vehicle, so we just need to continue to make our way along there. So I'm going to pop the tubing up behind the fuel tank here and against these hard lines, because we're able to cable tie through those hard lines. Just make sure you leave a little bit of slack for now so that you can adjust it if you need to. We're going to continue this process following these hard lines along the chassis rail all the way to the front at the engine bay. So you want to continue along the chassis above the cross member. Once you've come up above the sway bar here, it's time to start passing it up into the engine bay. And we're just going to run along the back of the engine bay up the firewall. So we're going to reach down and grab that hose and pull it up and through. Once you've passed it up and through, just mock up where you want to run it. We are going to cable tie it to secure it in place. Make sure you give yourself a little bit of excess before we do cut it. And then you can take your cutters of choice and just cut that hose. Once you're happy that it's cut to the right length, grab one of your hose clamps and pop that on. Then take your barb fitting, pop it down through the hole and into the end of the tube. Now you can put a little bit of rubber grease on the end of the barb fitting to make it slide in a bit easier. Then I'm going to take the 1/4 inch socket and do up that hose clamp. Then you can take the diff breather itself and screw that in. And your 12 and 14mm open-ended spanners just to nip that up. You don't want to over tighten it. Now at this point you can go and do up the hose clamp at the other end on the rear diff and trim all of the tag ends off your cable ties. Looking at the front diff breather now, so we're on the front axle on the left hand side of the vehicle. We've got 2 bolts we need to remove with our 12mm socket, one here going that way and one here going that way. Now on the axle end, you want to pinch that clip together, move it out of the way. And then again, you can pull the hose up off of that barb fitting. On the front end, we're actually going to try and reuse just this bracket and the shorter of the 2 bolts, because it creates a really nice little area where you can pass the tube through. So take the shorter bolt, pop it through. And we'll just snug that down with the 12mm. And then same as before, we'll take a bit of paper towel and clean up that barb. So we're going to take the leftover piece of tube and we're going to pass it down through this bracket. And similar to before, we're going to make a loop in the tubing to allow for that articulation. Then you can pop one of your other hose clamps over the tube and press it down onto the barb. So we're going to go straight up above where the axle is and over this engine mount here, and then proceed back along the chassis towards the firewall. So same as before, you want to cable tie it to the hard lines as you go. And once you get to here, we're going to follow the same route that we did for the rear diff breather. So you just want to take the end and pass it up along the firewall into the engine bay. So then you can reach down and grab the end of the hose and pass it up following the same route as the other one. And then again, once you're happy with how that's routed, we can cut it to length. Feed the last of those hose clamps onto your tube. And then pass the barb down through the bracket and into the end of the tube. Then we can tighten up that hose clamp with a 1/4 inch socket. And you can screw your breather in and just nip it up with your 12 and 14mm spanners. And I'm just going to pop one last cable tie in to make it nice and neat and tidy. We're all finished. We just want to go around and trim all of the cable ties and make sure you do up the hose clamps at the differential ends as well. That's all there is to installing the extended diff breathers. If you've seen our other videos on how to change the front and rear wheel bearings and axle oil seals, you'll appreciate how much work goes into those jobs. So this is a really simple one that you can do at the same time to make sure that your new diff oil and axle seals go the distance. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.